course, there's some of us only considered my friend's question from the point of view of personal provision to others and help. But there was the other side, which was what's the state doing from there? We got to education and what are the values we might want kids to get from school, and whether it's just to bring up the perfect worker in your society with the values that make them an obedient and industrious and helpful and reliable worker, or whether we were concerned for the person on a much wider scale. But in some sense, I think I brought up that we do want a society that actually gives the necessities of life where they're missing. We've found in reality that if we give we don't want to give unnecessarily, so we have things like a means test, and that seems very unkind, and there's a lot of problems in that. So we have a rule, like with our elderly, we might have state pension. It's not a means test, everyone gets it, and okay, some don't need to be given it, the really wealthy, but they could draw it. I remember my gran didn't. She never drew a pension. She just felt, well, she didn't need it, and it wasn't right to take that off the state. Which was interesting to my mum, coming from a poor background. I think she wasn't quite sure what to make of this. She wasn't terribly keen on her mother-in-law, and I suppose she didn't really want to appreciate that this was in some sense very good of her not to be taking from the state where you didn't need to. But the bulk of people who need, well, it would be very good if we had a state that met that need. And it's mooted these days that a good idea would be, well, how about giving everyone a basic income that covers the, shall we say, at least the minimum of society that you need to have a life that's at all tolerable and perhaps reasonably comfortable. And then, if they want to work, and they will, because they want more, or they can work for whatever the wage is, and they don't lose their state benefit. Everybody gets a state benefit. And so if you want to cut your neighbour's hedge for $5 an hour, well, you can. The neighbour doesn't have to pay you the minimum wage and not do it, and you not work, because you don't want to lose your benefit. I mean, you don't want that sort of poverty trap situation where you can't earn anything much because you lose it from your state benefit. That seems sad. And perhaps then we wouldn't have any unemployment at all, and productivity would be much greater, and people would be quite happy to, and if they don't want to work for whatever the man next door is willing to pay them, well, fine, they don't have to, do they? They still got the minimum. Okay, you get free riders that just lay flat and take the pension, but I'm not sure that there's anything like the number of free riders as there are the number of unemployed in a society that has minimum wages and, for instance, no benefit at all, even if you're in desperate need. And that would seem a very harsh society. So when does the state give is the second aspect to the question, which is one that some of us didn't think of when, I suppose, in the way my friend couched the proposal of what we should talk about. So from a kind society point of view that we value and live in, perhaps that would be very good. And that's important to consider, because then we would probably be much happier that those of us who are working are taxed in some way, because it's a worthwhile need, and if everybody's pulling their weight in doing this, in other words, all those that are employed, well, we're willing to carry those who are in need in this way. And we can avoid the means test simply by everybody receiving the benefit. And okay, those that are able are paying more and simply paying themselves higher, paying more tax, which covers the fact that they're receiving, which more than covers just the benefit they're receiving. So they are worse off. But then kindness is like that, isn't it? I mean, if I give, then it means from me to you. And in material senses, I therefore will consume less, or own less at least. And, perhaps that's a nice society to live in. And we're happy that to live in that sort of... We would choose that. In other words, we don't get the free rider problem from the point of view of taxation. Most of us are willing to do it. And we do get free riders, some that just could work but don't want to, and so don't. Perhaps they're not the sort of people that would work very hard and be a terribly good employees anyway. We may not have lost much. And you may say, well, why should we help such people at all? Well, perhaps it's not something to be envious of, that we've got some free riders, and in some sense the free riders that just take and don't give aren't happy people at all. They'd be much happier if they were doing something they feel is valued and gives them good social contacts and feel they're contributing to their society, although what they're able to contribute might be quite mundane, like cutting a neighbour's hedge, even, but the neighbour values it, and she can't do it any longer because age and illness perhaps. And so we start to do things the more that are truly appreciated by others, rather than chasing the dollar all the time. It's a sort of utopia, isn't it? But it's worth trying, isn't it? And we do. We're already doing it. Anyone who's over 60-something or other gets a pension. If he wants, even if he's a millionaire, and if he does, well, the millionaire's paying so much tax, we're not too troubled about the injustice that he draws the pension back again if he does. I mean, it's not that unjust. I mean, he probably doesn't need to, like my gran, and doesn't do it. Doesn't need to, it doesn't occur to him. It's not worth going, not worth even receiving it, Or perhaps he takes it because he knows he's giving far more in tax anyway. Bless him. I don't want to be a burden on the rich. But I do want the rich to be kind. In fact, we want us all to be kind, don't we? I want the unemployed person who's able to be kind. So he thinks to himself, what can I do to be a blessing to my society? I think I'll go and help in this charitable work, because I could just do things like mow people's lawn and, do the garden and housework for them, but I'd rather be helping kids in need, or, what can I do in the community that makes it a better place? Perhaps there's a sense of gratitude that starts to come too, that, you do receive this pension. What a wonderful society. What a wonderful society that wants to meet my need when I'm seriously unemployed, or homeless, or without income, or ill, or aged. What a wonderful society. You could call it a welfare state. A very good one. How lovely. So we can make our world quite wonderful, really. And the astonishing thing is that we do. But I'll make a break here and leave that to the part C. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.